Well, welcome everyone to the last session of the day, and thank you very much for being here to join me on this great topic, KPIs, what gets measured gets managed. Look, I've worked in the industry mostly on agency side for probably about 30 plus years, and as an employee having a KPI structure that I was working towards goals, and now in my more recent role at K-Mint, previously known as Kathryn's Mint, implementing KPI programs. And I've often seen them fall over because they are actually seen to be quite tricky to create and implement. So I spent a lot of time working with the agencies and my clients' businesses to create a program and develop programs that you can implement with ease and manage. So today's slide presentation, I've chosen the theme of children and measuring, if you've been a child, which most of you would have been, or if you have children, love measuring how high they are each year on their birthday. And this is a little bit about what we do in setting a KPI program. It's all about setting targets and objectives here and to kind of keep it simple and keep it fun and enjoyable. So the number one thing is, really keep yourself focused on what the prize is. Like, what are you actually, why? Like, what's it all about? Why would you do this? Why would you implement? What are you actually looking for, and will it keep you motivated throughout? So I've got this kid obviously looking in at the chocolate shop, and that's all he wants. And we use this as parents and as a child as an incentive to encourage good behaviour, encourage, I guess, follow this path and you will be rewarded. So Laurie Wisdow, VP, she's in Philadelphia. She's the VP of Martech at Forrester Research, been there for 8 years. I loved her quote, and if you follow her on LinkedIn, she does some really good blogs about this space, about measuring and the results. And we've talked a lot over the last few days about how we get so much data, which one would think we're going to be KPI'd on, and the consistent, I guess, approach or thinking and thoughts from the audience back questions to those on the stage has been, well, what do we do with that data? And if you were at Deloitte's on the breakfast yesterday, you would hear pretty much they were saying, it's pretty useless if you don't know what to do with it. So Laurie does some great articles to actually explain it's sure you measure it to a report, but you're actually measuring to grow. So again, like the child measuring as they grow older, their height increasing and going further. So trying to work out, well, what does growth look like? So we're going to kind of explore that in today's session. So the metrics that matter. Well, if we're looking about growth, what are the growth metrics? And are they qualitative? Are they quantitative? Are they long-term? Are they short-term? And what is it to me anyway? So, and my team, like why do I care about that? So a lot of you may already have this in play at your office. So today I'm just going to take you through what impact, particularly in the marketing space, which is why we're here, has on sales and the higher levels. If you were in the previous section with Julia, you would have heard moving from CMO to CEO. Also another earlier session with the CFO panel where we were talking about the impact at the higher levels and what's important. And I'm going to stretch that out into agency partner world as well, which is where I spend a lot of time. I'm going to touch on some metrics and models and explore how simple they can be. And then most of the latter section will be on implementing a plan. So what impact is marketing going to have on sales, measuring your ROI, so that return on investment? It's like starting at the beginning with the end in mind to know what would the return look like. So consider the complete picture, because quite often one of the reasons why a KPI program falls down is because we're looking quite myopically about just this bit of the pie here. But there is actually quite a lot to the peripheral of what you may be looking at. Again, you've probably got all the pieces of the puzzle in front of you on your desk with multiple data sources and lots of different things that you think you're supposed to be achieving and a job description that says this as well, but you can't quite figure out what that complete picture looks like. So consider it in advance as to what you think this picture might be, and then it'll work backwards from there. So we're going to uncover the facts as to what you might start to sort of scratch a little deeper to see, and again, looking at ordering and keeping it simple. In one of the earlier sessions, we heard Laura, actually from ANZ, Head of Brand and Marketing, talking about the clarity and the common language and simplicity and how that helps her manage multiple teams and multiple sectors within her remit. So these metrics and models, something to reach to, visual as well, really important. The dashboard. Driving a car, anyone who doesn't drive, you'll still know, because you've been a passenger in a car at some point, the dashboard is common in every single car. It tells you the most vital details of your car, particularly your speed and your petrol gauge. That's all it is. A dashboard has to be visual, so it doesn't rely on language, not necessary to have words. If it doesn't explain with the visual, the illustration or the donut, if you can't actually understand what it says, then it's not a good dashboard. It should be self-explanatory. A picture tells 1,000 words. So the dashboard models, and these are simple ones that I've put together, which kind of link to a lot of the content that's been discussed throughout the last couple of days. So the marketing pie, in a simplistic visual, is pretty much segmenting into the various components of where your spend might be, digital, PR, social, etc. Looking at cost, so how much you're actually investing in each of those. Looking at ultimately sales, but that could be qualitative as well as quantitative. And then how would you measure your ROI? So as you work out towards the perimeter of the pie, you're already answering what you might be looking for at the very get-go. And it's a very simple way to then follow with your report beyond. So it will catch everything in one visual. You can total it up. We also heard earlier when on the CFO panel that Julia was hosting, that looking at them relative to each other, so growth in one sector to another, was also something that the CFOs are particularly interested in. The language that's used about cost, marketing cost versus investment, has a lot to do with the ROI. And that would be, again, qualitative when we might be talking about brand. So the guys from Deloitte were saying, and I totally agree, last year's keynote for me was all about intellectual property and the brand value, that the brand value of all of the businesses that we talk about is probably the biggest asset of every business. About 60% of the business valuation is intangible assets, and 50% of that is brand. Next week, Brand Z, Top 100 Global Brands report comes out from Millward Brown. So Kantar Millward Brown, if any of you follow that. 14 years they've been now running the Top 100, where brand is valued. So any of you in the room working for large, well-known corporate brands, your brand is probably on that top list. And certainly in your category, you can see how they measure globally the increase of value over year on year and within the category. So to get a bit of a clue as to how do you manage that or measure that intangible asset. The revenue cycle is another one, and consistently over the last couple of days, trying to work out how does marketing have an impact in the end game, which is turning customers, converting them into repeat business and along the path. Another simple visual, if you can look at it per type of discipline, it might be different. Again, back it with some numbers, back it with your, again, visual. You don't need to explain it. It should be self-explanatory. And if you can get the answer, that would make all the difference. You've probably seen the NPS many, many times. Again, it's a really nice visual one. And if you have this, again, it's self-explanatory. Even in an agency where you might be just assessing your own performance, it's great to get your customer feedback and just visually represent it to know that you're actually on the right path. The marketing funnel I love. Got a lot of numbers on it, I suppose that's probably why, but it makes sense. Again, it's a really nice visual. You've probably seen this in 1,000 different formats, but it works. It starts at the top where you've got a lot more coming in the top of the funnel and sifts down until you convert and get those customers. Putting some percentages on the side, and imagine having this visual last year, next year prediction based on your history. So again, it can be quite easy to replicate, and behind it would be an Excel grid, or it's coming from one of your tableaus or whatever the marketing tools are that you have. Balanced scorecard and triple, double lines and all, they start getting a little bit more complex. So I'm not sure if you work at this level in the room. And again, keeping with the theme, I want to keep it really simple. It's just 4 post-its, and it's made up quite simply with what are the goals financially for your customer side, internal and innovative. There might be some others that you're looking at. And then how would you know, how would you measure those goals to know whether you've actually been successful? What's the indication? So keep it simple. you can have hundreds and hundreds of these. And so I wasn't actually going to go through all the metrics today because they'll be so different from what you might want to what you might want on this side of the room. And whether you're working as a marketeer in a business or whether you're an employee in an advertising agency. But to keep it simple. This is just an illustration that I've pinched off the website of a dashboard reporting tool from Clipfolio, and there are a myriad of different ones that you can get. And as we've been hearing, the data that we're getting out is just intense. And quite often it doesn't make sense to a lot of our teams, and we're actually not able to see how it really impacts at the top of the tree. This dashboard might also appear in a different format for a CEO, for the CFO, for the CTO, and maybe even operations have their own dashboards. So again, consistently, and I would definitely encourage everybody to be working as a team to understand what's on everybody else's dashboards so that you can create one that's simple and represents everybody's ultimate goal. So implementing the program. What I want to talk about here is where we start, knowing that we've got everything that I've just shown you and probably a whole bunch more, where do we actually start? This is my thinking. And I've seen it work quite well. Where it falls down, as I mentioned before, is if you actually haven't got this plan right at the beginning. So get it sort of in motion and then you are ready to roll it out. It's like anything. Spend the time up the front to create it and to develop the strategy and your implementation plan. Work with your team and then roll it out. So I look at it certainly from a commercial lens focus. So I'm looking, why would I be doing this? What it's in it for the commercial success of a business? But I'm also looking at in fact, the practicalities of implementing. So really, it's about clarity, clarifying the core. I've said agencies here, but it could be the business objectives, and that's from the business overall. What are their strategic plans for the year ahead? What are the issues that they're trying to mitigate? What are those core objectives? Get clarity around that. And there's not usually any more than maybe 3. Then what are the success indicators? How will we know that they've actually been successful? What are the consequences? Now this is big picture. What are the consequences if we don't work on sustainability, if we don't hit this particular target, if we don't get there? Training people to understand what it is we're trying to achieve, and then how do you adjust and redivert if we need to reassign along the way and be nimble. From a practical sense, there are organisations. Within those organisations, there are the individuals that work for you, the marketer, or perhaps the agency, and then of course there's you. So what does it mean for each of those different players? The clear KPI dashboard, ease of implementation, our reporting routine, and then focusing on deliverables, not necessarily those things that don't work, but delivering will then help you decide if you're going to let things go, the ones that are not working. So building on from that, you might have, as we mentioned before, and if you know that this is true, there's mostly KPI programs, people think money, think dollars, but there's definitely a lot of quantitative stuff that will link in, and that's back to the balanced scorecard, and particularly in our world of brand, there's a lot that sits up in there. So we were listening to John Blackman earlier in Julia's session from the Sydney Opera House, where he recognised exactly what the Deloitte guys said, that 60% of the business is intangible assets. And he put out for a survey as to the valuation of the Sydney Opera House as an icon. And with that, he then now implements an annual valuation survey. And even if you can see his little needle of what that is moving from 80 to 82%, then that's the growth he's looking for from a quantitative perspective, but it has a direct impact on customers attending and buying tickets. So looking at the vision, what is he trying to achieve, and how would he know if he's been successful? So he had to implement a baseline plan to start, I don't know, let's have this plan, and then measure going on. The qualitative measures are usually quicker, particularly if you're in the digital space, where you're getting hits and likes and shares very quickly. The quantitative ones usually take a little longer before you start talking about brand awareness and recognition. You could then split that into different streams. So what is the qualitative, quantitative for the individual, for the marketer, for the agency, for the team overall. So again, it could just be you have this built and you're starting to just drop ideas into these tables so that you can formulate, well, what are we actually going to be tracking? The first step, though, is like, why? What is it that's compelling you to put a KPI program in play? It's usually to articulate the vision, and that is the vision of the business ultimately. If you're running your own show, that's just as valid as it's a big corporation. It could be for your department as well as your individual vision. Agree accountabilities, and what else do we need to incorporate? The bigger one that I find is, and it usually stops people in their tracks from implementing a KPI program, is why would your team want to participate in this? So you have to kind of get into their world a little bit, which is why the individual is important. And are those whys strong enough to keep everyone focused? Focused on a rainy day, like will it actually keep everyone involved and geared and feeling good about it if we've had a really bad month? I guess part of this is, again, back to making it personal. Visual. So moving away from dashboards, visual, thinking more about the rewards. So I'll just hang here for a little bit on rewards because, again, a little bit of a misnomer about KPI programs is I'm going to have to pay my staff more money. Sometimes you do. Sometimes there's a financial incentive attached to it. Other times it doesn't have to be. So there's one school of camp that says, I'm paying you as an employee, there's a job description, and you are to do those things. Why would I pay you more? That's true. But out of those things, there'll be probably some areas on the job description, the JD or PD, that are a little rusty, a little bit weak, that need a bit more focus, so that they will then align to the corporate goals. So finding out what they are, and you know what they are, you just need to pick them out of that 2-page job description and make them the KPIs. It doesn't mean that you need to pay people more. It depends on your message and how you roll this out as to what's going to be expected by your team and the company. So you need to know that first. So if it isn't financial rewards, maybe it's other types of rewards. It could be a career path for them to be able to move up the ranks. They need to do these things. So make the key things in their job the performance that you're assessing, and the indication of success will help you promote them. It could also, when I say visual, I've worked with some businesses that they really do make it visual. They ask everybody to, once they've kind of gone some way down the path on this, put in this column, and this column from low to high rewards. So if we hit this target, this target, this target, getting to the bigger targets of success, higher values of rewards. So the visual look of what goes into these columns, which ended up being on a whiteboard for one business I worked with, were things like tickets to gold class, dog walking, a gym membership. Then it kind of moved up to sort of red balloon stuff. Then it moved into a different category altogether where it was talking about training but going overseas for that, or attending Mumbrella. So they're business deductible expenses. Some may attract FBT, but it's not necessarily going into their pay packet as an extra. The other thing to say is keep it alive. So that does keep it alive, because every time the people come into the office, they see what they've created as their rewards. And it's quite powerful for people. It doesn't have to be big money. For a lot of people, there are just some things they just really would like: a cleaner at home, or they really want that magazine subscription. So there's a lot that you can do. So actually how to create it, make the decision, just do it. You could walk out of here today going, okay, oh, fine, I better get on and do this thing. And tomorrow start planning. Set a timeline. So to give you a steer of what that would usually look like. So we're June. Ideally, it would be lovely if you could start at 1st of July, new financial year. So to get this done in the next 2 and a bit weeks, maybe it's possible if you've already got a piece or two of the puzzle. Usually, in my experience, it probably takes a month or so to get all of the information together as to what is the corporate vision: CEO, CFO, CTO, marketer. If I'm an agency, I've got my remit as well. I need to get some interviews with them to join up with them to get them on board. So it probably take a month or two to actually create this. How are we going to measure it? When are we going to measure it? Who are we actually asking to be part of it? It can take maybe a month or two. Then, as we'll go through the next slides, you've got to map that out. Now, why are we doing it's considered? Who is going to be involved? So it might just be a select few, or it might be the whole business. If it's a select through, then how are you going to roll that out to them and when? Present it to them. I strongly recommend that you present as a collective, because it's very likely that if I'm asking one side of the team of these, say, 10 people to do a particular key thing, it's going to impact somebody else on the other side of the coin. So they've got to work together as a team. So the rollout or the announcement of your KPI program needs to be with everyone. Then what you do is you take one by one and you meet with them with your pre-designed idea as to how you're going to KPI them, and get them involved. Ask them if that actually looks right to them. Do you think that will make a difference? Here's how we think we'll report it with these reports. Press this button, pull this report. What do you think? Do you think it's manageable? And we're thinking to do this at a monthly roundtable. Join an executive leadership body, and that's how we're going to roll it out. They're kind of engaged at that point, one-on-one. And then the very next thing is actually reinforce it, keep it alive with your agreements. That actually then becomes an attachment to their employment contract. So if it's financially bonused, if it's just gifts and small things, you probably don't need to go that far. But if it's going to be, you'll have a fixed price bonus of, say, 20 grand. Pro rata, if you achieve all of your KPIs, then you'll get the whole lot, or pro rata if you don't. Or a percentage. Not keen on percentages though. I have seen some percentages that work on GP. I would go against that. It actually needs to be EBIT, so your profit line, because you need to actually budget into your GP to cover those bonuses, and it's almost like guaranteed. So you've got to hit the profit though to be able to pay it. So there's some caveats around that, which means you do need to impact the employee contract. If you're looking to revamp your employee contracts, it's a good opportunity to do it at that point. And again, the staff need to sign it off. So keep everybody alive and working with it with you. The rewards is really important as well. Quite often, again, I see KPI programs falling down because it's a really long year if you've got to wait till the very end to get something back. Get everyone tracking their own KPIs every month in a management meeting. Every quarter, you can reward every quarter or every half year based on work complete or achievements, and then perhaps something at the end. Have your rules around whether, if you leave during that time, whether you're entitled or not. But really take action every month, or else people just forget it even exists. Make it part of the meeting and the first part of the meeting. So anytime, just make sure you're ready to start. You really could start tomorrow. Have your whys, draft your tables for each member, copy paste, or a group of people. It's very much the same, but we're going to tweak it for these people versus those. Know which reports you're going to use, absolutely critical, because again, I see these programs fall down. When you set it all up, it's fantastic, but we actually don't know how to monitor it during the term. And people get very disgruntled, and it's a bit grey, did I achieve it or not? Really critical. You either achieved it or you didn't. It's a yes, no. It's got to be that clear. And if you can't say yes, no, it's a bit subjective, then you're going to have problems. Present it, put your format, your routine, and get everyone to sign off, and you're ready to go. So bringing it all together, keep it simple. Don't try and put too many KPIs on. I would say probably 2 qualitative and 2 quantitative. That would do it. Because guaranteed, if you pick the right 2, they influence everything else. So if you're in the agency world, it's probably going to be get your timesheets in, or it might be hit your revenue target, or it might be don't overservice and make sure you get that scope right. Work closer with your clients. If you're in CMO roles, you might be looking at what's the CFO want? How do I get there? How am I going to manage my externals? What's my marketing pie? Create the rhythm. Keep that going. Keep it alive. Make sure you reward. And if you're not financially or in-kind rewarding, please announce it. If people do good, let everybody know. Make sure you share and acknowledge. So in summary, I'd just like to say the biggest thing to get clarity of the whole picture with all the pieces that you probably already have is just work as a team. It's possible that you've not actually put a KPI program in before, or somebody's put one in that's a little bit not sure or let it go. They haven't managed it properly. So remember, it's probably not your core strength to run a KPI program. So try and work as a team, help each other to fine-tune it and get it to be exactly what you need. Common language, so fancy acronyms and lingo, but if everyone doesn't understand, it's going to make it a little tricky to, certainly if you're CTO and CFO language, bring it down to common, what everyone understands. Is it revenue? Is it GP? Is it extraction? And use it all to prove to yourself that what investment you've received for your marketing budget and what you've delivered, the ROI is well worth reinvesting in, and which part of that pie, and for a personal growth as well. So as a final, team. It's all about team. Otherwise, you're working in a bit of a silo and you're going to miss opportunities. You'll actually achieve a whole lot more if you work together as a team, right up to the CEO. And ultimately, the CEO wants you to be successful as well. Get those agreed metrics in, keep it simple, just a few, and make this KPI program part of your career curriculum to help you get further in your own personal journey, but also within your organisation. It's a really nice attractor if you do have a great KPI program in. So I'll wrap it up, and I'm really happy that I've probably got about 5-10 minutes to have a chat. If you've got any specific questions or want some detail from me, I'm really happy to share what works, what doesn't work, and how long, and some good examples in the industry.
Good stuff. All right, thank you. Round of applause for Kathryn. Well done.
Thank you.
Take a seat, take a seat.
Thank you.
All right, hands up for questions, and I'll get a microphone to you ASAP. Please. No,
Please.
I've got plenty here. What's the most creative example that you've seen of a KPI that wasn't about money, wasn't about revenue?
Getting to work on time. It wasn't the most creative, but getting to work on time, attending meetings are quite common where there are people who are a bit tardy. I think probably research and attending networking, that can be another KPI for people that are working at a higher level that are stuck at their desk, but they actually need to get out and spend more time with their clients or spend more time at industry events like this. So it's not really a money thing. There might be an investment to allow that to happen, but it grows them as individuals and allows them to actually start thinking on the biggest scheme of things.
And those things that, as you said, you have to have a clear yes, no, measurable things.
Yeah, so did you go to a networking event once a month?
Yeah.
Did you learn something? Did you come back and present it to your team? It might not be just because I want to meet new people. It might actually be on a topic. I mean, this forum has been amazing for learning about podcasting and digital. And I don't know how many notes I've written. And if you've written a bunch of notes, you're going to put them in a drawer and then so what? But maybe there's stuff in there you want to happen and you can make it a KPI. Like it's a mini personal KPI that I'm actually going to action those things over the next 6 months.
So then those things where, I mean, obviously, most of the industry, if not all, doesn't have a formal sort of clock on, clock off system. And obviously, what I'm trying to get to is, obviously everything's measurable, but certain things like, did you get to enough this or that? People are going to argue the toss a little bit here. So how do you avoid those areas becoming KPIs, and what do you do when either a staff member or someone wants to start arguing the measurement of them?
So that's really important at the very beginning, where you identify what it is and you work with your teammates to understand that you're either going to achieve it, yes or no. Can we answer that particular indication, yes or no? So you're kind of agreeing it up front. I guess the area that's a little wishy-washy is in the area of creativity. So when I'm setting KPIs for creatives, it's a bit challenging because, sure, if they were given a bunch of hours to do a job, they might have done it quicker though, and that really goes unnoticed. And it's worth noting that, and I guess commending them, but also I'm more interested in what the output was. I'm not really interested in the hours. So how do we learn? Have they used a certain tool or a technique? Have they got a better scope from their client? Have they had some experience that my others in that department haven't? And certainly at the higher levels as well, when we're looking at awards, I mean, they're not really dollar value things, but if that is something that's important that your client wins in their industry, how do we make them the best? How do we help them shine?
And if I can just ask a bit more about that KPIs about creatives, because, certainly in my experience of broadcasting in telly, radio and the rest, is that there are certain people who love being around the office and the ecosystem of the office for the 10 hours before they have to go and do the ultimate creative task for the day. There are others who enjoy the adrenaline of getting there 5 minutes before. And certainly I've seen office situations and office politics and management situations become a little bit fraught when you have somebody who wants to be able to say, no, part of your job is to be here all day, but the truth is that, as you say, the output ends up being the management. Again, what's your advice to people about how to pick, okay, that one's going to be great for 8 hours a day and that one's going to be great for the 2 hours that they do the most visible
Yeah, look,
thing a day.
the point is not every employee is tardy. So, and the KPIs are to focus people individually to certain things. So it might be that there's one KPI set particularly for this employee, but a different one for another. So it's not across the board. There might be some that are common. But one of the best examples where I've seen it kind of be difficult with some employees, they'll show up to meetings unprepared. So that's just not efficient for any business and for any department. And I think the others at the table that are prepared get a little bit frustrated, but nobody does anything about it. So it could be a KPI to ensure that they do show up to the meeting prepared and that they leave the meeting with their action points and they're delivered on time. And what you need to do is say, because that is grey, did you or did you not? What you need to do is actually find a solution, and I guess this is where expertise comes in, and if you've not done it before, things like KPIs that will fall over. What would make me know that somebody did show up to the meeting prepared or show up to a pitch prepared? If they've done a dry run or if they're actually in the meeting and they're running the meeting, would tell me that they've prepared. So rather than have one person running the meeting, that they individually must contribute. It's quite obvious if you haven't prepared. And if that's a weak point, then maybe I'm going to ask that person to facilitate all of those meetings for the next 6 months. So you really get to the point then. Just help them by trying to get them to do it and support them in doing it.
Yeah, again, anyone from the floor? I can keep going here and I will. But about that idea about when you're establishing these things, there are, maybe I'm playing to certain stereotypes here and I apologise, but we all know that there are differences in age groups about the concept of accountability and about what accountability means and about what things can be argued back about versus, no, the person in charge of the business or directly in charge of me has an authority to say, I set this task for you, please complete.
And you didn't do it.
Correct. And we all know that there can be employees who they'll agree to anything, but they're not used to being measured on anything and they want to argue the toss.
Got a great example of a senior GAD and terrible with process. Just does most of the work by verbal, doesn't follow the protocol of filling in reports, doesn't cross the T's, dot the I's. It's a really bad example for the rest of the team, and it's letting us down. So we're actually missing stuff. This is in an agency land. The clients are also suffering as a result of this. So how do you KPI that? So the way, it's very similar to my last answer, the way we KPI that is, if you were really crap at something when you were younger and it really hurt you, like you were aware that it wasn't great, what did you do? You practiced, you refined it, and you got better and better and better at it. So we actually ask the person that has a weak area to really focus on that area by making them do it. In this case, we actually asked them to write, and not write it in the old-fashioned ways in a manual, but record an online video training manual on how you do these things within the business. It became quite obvious in the first month that she actually didn't know how to do it because she'd never been trained and there was no consequence. So we now had a way to unearth that she didn't really know how to fill out on the Trello board, whatever it was, and she was then learning how to do it. She had to put a little video, 3-second video intro, and then it was a 3-minute training on all of these different areas, and then present it to her team and champion the onboarding program that was a new initiative as a result of this. The other great thing, just to extend on this, is you're creating people that can run your business. It's a succession plan and a career plan for them. They may actually if you're a flat organisation, they might reach a ceiling where there is no further career plan for them in your business, and they will go outside to another job, a larger business. And they go with this information. If you are somebody that is running a business or you're close to running a business, again, this is a great way to actually learn how to implement the commercial smarts of what's important to an organisation. So it's a great way to actually induct your people into being mini business owners, whether they stay or go.
How do you avoid not scaring the employees when you're going to introduce something like this? Because they may have been through previous organisations that, well, this was the precursor to not being here anymore. It's not going to work.
Yeah, I've seen all that before. It's really great because it's not stuff. It's really important that it's not new stuff. They're probably already doing it, and you're allowed a little bit of leeway to introduce something a little bit different. So, harking back to where I was saying, It doesn't have to be something, it has to be on their job description. Just pick out the things on their JD. You don't want to be putting on new stuff because people are going to say, well, I definitely need a pay rise if you're going to ask me to do all that. You're expecting them to do what they're probably already doing, so it's not really different. They're just being a bit slack on some of the stuff, or maybe they need some training, or it really is important, so we need them to do it consistently all the time. So you're working with them to encourage them to focus on things they may already be doing, and then you might stretch them, and that's the only way you're going to get it across the line without a pay review. Stretch them with potentially a lure of a bonus to take it to the next level. If it is part of the curriculum, a career curriculum, then that's a great opportunity for them to actually get to that level so they can be considered for a title and a salary increment.
All right, we've got a question down the front here. If we can, got a couple here. Always wait till the end when people want to start asking questions. You make me do all the hard work and then 2 minutes to go, oh, no, let's all have a crack.
And that's right, we've got
all right,
2 minutes.
Down the front, let's go.
Hi, Kathryn.
Hi, Adrian.
I was just wondering if you've ever had clients involved in setting KPIs with agencies for their internal staff.
It's quite rare, and again, I've had endorsement of that for these last couple of days, and it surprises me, but it's a really good space for, I think, the agencies to actually work with the clients. And the clients in the marketing department who probably don't have this, and as we've been hearing over the last few days, don't seem to be able to talk to the CEO or get to the CEO because they're not really on that level. So this would be a great initiative for agencies to work with the CMOs to identify what are the key performance indicators at the corporate level and bring it home right down to where it's all started, because that's where we're doing the work. And we might be way off or have no awareness. So I think it's almost like a consulting role between the two parties, and whether that's something through an initiative or like Legends and Leaders, where you actually bring them together, you create it. It doesn't exist as far as I know, the majority do not. And Harvard Business Review says that about 23% of marketers just don't even, it's just not on their radar. So working with agency and that collaboration, it's team. You can only do better than what you were doing yesterday.
Very
good question.
I've got one up the back here.
Yeah, do you have any best practices for communicating and displaying results as you move towards your goals on KPIs? You know, you talked about monthly meetings, which are good. We currently have a dashboard we send around by PDF, which is a bad thing to do because people don't open the PDF. But how do you get this stuff in front of people on a regular basis so they're constantly looking at it and working on it?
People who are KPI'd want to show you that they succeeded, because they do. They do, and they don't usually fail. They might muck it up on the first couple of goes, but they do eventually get it right. I mean, they're clever people. They're doing it already. They just needed guidance. So the best forum I find is you create that as a monthly, usually monthly, although some KPIs are weekly, where it is round table. And if you're multi-location, then dial them in on Zoom. Let them present that piece, and then move to the next and the next and the next. And as a team, you can learn off each other. Again, that's just great testing and learning. And they're also learning some other skills such as public speaking, preparing for the meeting, and taking down the notes and taking the feedback on the chin if it's not great, and working as a team.
All right, last one is from me. Best reward that you've seen somebody give out for a KPI?
The best reward was quite an interesting one and very random because it wouldn't apply for me at all. But we had a young lady in a copywriting agency in Melbourne who wanted a horse so desperately, loved horses. And no, we didn't buy her the horse. What we did was we allowed her to leave early on Fridays, so she had full pay for Fridays. She did work back another night, but if she achieved certain KPIs, she was allowed to leave early on the Friday, and we introduced her to a role which was being a strapper for a horse company on the weekends. And she was over the moon. It really was no drama. Somebody in the business actually had a horse ranch, so it was like pretty easy going.
That's pretty cool. So get a horse, everyone. Yeah. Thank you very much. That was a lot of fun. Thank you. And thank you to everyone for coming along. All of our sponsors and delegates. That's Mumbrella360 done for another year. Make sure you give your feedback in the next little while. Thank you to Tim and all of the team. And once again, thank you very much, Kathryn. And I'll see you again next year. Ta-da.
Thank you.
Thank you.